Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Before we get into today's video, I wanted to tell you about a very special giveaway in honor of my birthday. I'm giving away a $50 Pinkfresh Studio digital gift card code over on my Instagram account. So be sure you head on over there, find the post with this card, and enter to win. Today, I am sharing a card project that features the brand new Flowers for the Soul product suite. This product suite just launched on Tuesday of this week, and it includes 4 fabulous products that coordinate together, including this brand new washi with the gold foil accents. I absolutely love the Pinkfresh Studio washi tapes. They are such a great way to create quick and easy cards. It also includes this beautiful Flowers for the Soul stamp set. There are 2 large one-piece stamps in this stamp set with coordinating sentiments, and the dies match up with these as well. So you will find 2 large one-piece dies in the die set, as well as some sentiment dies. So you can see all of these images are connected and all of these images are connected. Now, the stencil set also follows along that same idea. You have 2 segments of the stencils that coordinate with those large one-piece stamps. And today, I'm actually going to copy the colors on the back of the stamp packaging or the stencil packaging to make this really easy. So today, as I'm creating, I wanted to share a few tips for how to create when you're not feeling creative. I'm going to kind of weave these tips in as I talk you through the creation of this card. So I'm starting out with one of the large one-piece stamps from the Flowers for the Soul stamp set. I'm placing it in my Misty stamping tool with some white cardstock, and I'm inking this up with the Metropolis ink and stamping that down. Now you're going to see that I actually had a little fuzzy on my stamp that didn't give me the best stamped image when I was done. So I'm going to flip this cardstock around and stamp it again. So my first tip for creating when you feel stuck is to find some inspiration from the packaging and copy that. So for instance, in this card, I am taking the color scheme on the back of the stencil packaging, and I'm going to use that to choose the ink colors that I'm blending with. Now on these stencils, you will see that one side will coordinate with one of the large one-piece stamps and the other side will coordinate with the other one-piece stamp. They are divided by a score line or an etched line in the stencil, so you'll be able to easily match these up. I'm starting with stencil number 1 today, and I'm going to work my way through these stencils in order. I'm not going in any special order. And for this stencil, I am using Ocean Breeze ink, and this comes from the packaging. There were these beautiful blue leaves on the stencil packaging, and I thought, I want to recreate that. But I really wanted to tone this ink color down. So you're going to see me start with the Ocean Breeze ink and my large 1-inch blending brush and blend over the entire opening of the stencil that lines up with this large stamped image. And then I'm going to bring in the Misty Coast ink. This is going to just kind of tone that ink down just a little bit and kind of subdue the brightness of the Ocean Breeze ink. Because if you look at the packaging, it's not a super bright blue. It almost has a little bit of gray in it. So by adding a little bit of gray ink, I can achieve that same look. This Misty Coast ink is perfect for a technique like this, and you're going to see that in the end, I decided I had added a little too much gray, even though I was going very light with it, and I'm going to bring some of that blue back in towards the end of my stenciling, but I'm going to continue working my way through each of these stencils. So I'm going to remove stencil 1 now that I'm done with that and position stencil number 2. I am holding the stencils in place with some large magnets on my work surface. You can absolutely hold these stencils in place with tape or a sticky mat, whatever works for you. Now I referred to the packaging again, and these leaves on the packaging are a nice green color. So again, I'm bringing in this sage color ink with a 1-inch blending brush, but I'm going to knock it back just a little bit with that Misty Coast ink again. It's just going to kind of gray it down just a little bit and keep it from being too bright. Again, I was using the package for inspiration. So when I looked at the package, I really felt like maybe these colors weren't as bright as the true inks. And so I just found a way to kind of tone it back. Now, another great way to tone back ink is to use some white pigment ink over the top, just a light layer of that. Or you can mix two colors together if you don't have exactly the color of ink that you want. Just keep in mind the colors that you mix together, you want to make sure they don't make mud. So the best way to ensure that you're not going to make mud is to choose two inks that are close to each other on the color wheel. Now for this first floral layer, I'm positioning that. This is stencil number 3, and I'm blending over the top of this with Cherry Blossom ink. This is one of my favorite inks from Pinkfresh Studio, and I think it's so beautiful. And that brings me to tip number 2 for creating when you're not feeling so inspired. When I'm not feeling inspired, I love to reach back to something I'm very comfortable with, whether that's a favorite color, a favorite stamp set, a favorite die, whatever it might be. Find something that you know you're comfortable with, something that you know you love, and bring that into the project you're working on. If it's something that you love, something that you're familiar with, that's automatically going to inspire you to keep going. Now I'm lining up the next stencil, and this will color a couple other images, floral images on the stamp set. And for these on the packaging, they are a nice yellow color. So I'm starting out with sunshine and adding a light layer of sunshine over these floral images. And then I'm going to wipe off my stencil before I remove it from my stamped image. Now, I've been wiping off my stencils because I don't want to get ink on my fingers and then transfer that to my project inadvertently. Now I'm moving into the detail layers of the florals, and I'm going to use colors that are kind of in the same families, but just a darker version. So for the detail layer of the pink florals, I am using Peony ink, and I've switched over to a 1/2-inch blending brush because the openings on this particular stencil are much smaller, and so I can cover this quickly and have a little more control over the amount of ink that I'm putting down. Now I want to talk about my third tip for creating when you're not feeling uninspired. I just want to remind you that not every card has to blow your mind as far as techniques go. You can do simple stamping and simple ink blending and still come up with a beautiful card in the end. So don't feel like to create, you have to come up with some earth-shattering technique. Go with what you know, stick to the basics, and when you're feeling uninspired, give yourself permission to just create for the sake of creating. And that brings me to my fourth and final tip for creating when you're not feeling creative, and that's just start. Whether it's stamping a simple image or blending a simple panel, once you kind of start the activity of creating, that creative kind of place in your mind is going to ignite, and you're going to feel inspired to keep going. Now, I have added color to each one of these layers, but I'm going back to some of the layers because I wanted to adjust the color just a little bit. So on that yellow layer, I added a little bit of apricot ink just to kind of push it a little more in the orange direction. And I'm coming back to my leaves and I'm adding another layer of ocean breeze or sage over those colors to kind of bring the green and the blue back to life. Now, this is still going to keep it a little toned back because I'm ink blending over that gray ink that I added before, but it's going to bring a little bit more of the green up and a little bit more of the blue up. And don't feel like you have to limit yourself to just adding color over a stencil one time. If you want to adjust the color, you want to make something darker, you want to tone it down a little bit with a gray ink or a white pigment ink, you can definitely do that. So here is what my finished stamped and stenciled image looks like. I love it. It's inspired by the packaging. And so even when I wasn't feeling like I knew what colors I wanted to use, I used the packaging as a jumping off point, and that got my creativity rolling for the day. Now I'm taking the coordinating one-piece die and I'm lining it up over this stamped image. I'm holding it in place with some repositionable craft tape, and I ran that through my die cut machine, and now I have these images ready to go. Now, when you're using the washi set in this product suite, you will use 2 dies to cut all of the images in one panel of that washi design. I really like that Pinkfresh Studio has kind of divided these into two larger stamps, one-piece stamps and dies, because it really makes it easier to work with. The stamps are no longer too long to fit in your Misty, and the dies are no longer too long to go through a standard die cutting sandwich. So I stacked up a couple of layers of white die cuts behind my floral image and tied some twine around the base of that. And now I am using these postage edge rectangles from Pinkfresh Studio, and I've die cut one out of some craft cardstock, and I am going to add my sentiment. And I decided to white heat emboss it, but I wanted to add it vertically on this postage stamp. So I've aligned it using my Misty stamping tool. I've prepped the surface of my cardstock using a powder tool. And now I'm stamping my sentiment using the Calico white pigment ink from Pinkfresh Studio onto the edge of this postage edge rectangle. Now I did ink it a couple of times and stamp it to make sure that I got a good impression. And once I have an impression that I'm happy with, I'm going to remove this from my Misty stamping tool, add some detail white embossing powder, flick off the excess, and then I'm going to heat set that until my powder melts. Now keep in mind, you don't want to keep your heat tool in one place for too long. You want to just melt it until you see it's not granular and shiny anymore, and then move along. I die cut another one of these postage edge rectangles from some white cardstock, and I'm trimming off that postage edge because I'm going to use this as a mask. So once I have those edges trimmed off, I'm going to add just a little bit of tape runner adhesive on the back side and place it in the center of this craft postage edge rectangle where my sentiment is embossed. And I'm going to add some warm buff around the outer edge of this postage edge. Now this rectangle in the center will keep the ink from getting in the center of my postage detail here. And that's exactly what I wanted it to do. I kind of wanted to add some shading or the look of an additional layer without actually adding an additional layer. Now I did take my blending brush and kind of bring this ink into the center, but there wasn't enough ink on the brush to really be able to tell in the end. I'm positioning my floral piece onto this postage piece using some foam adhesive, and I'm just kind of allowing the edge of those florals to kind of wrap around my script greeting there on the side. I think this nestled in so perfectly. And then I'm going to create this tiny little mini tag. So this is about 3/8 inch wide and about an inch long, and I'm taking my scissors and just trimming the little corners off of the top to create a little teeny tag. I drew a gold heart on it with a gold pin, and then I placed that under the twine that I tied on my little floral piece. For some texture on my card front, I grabbed the Dainty Plaid rubber cling stamp from Pinkfresh Studio. This is one of my favorite backgrounds from Pinkfresh Studio. I think it can be used for so many things. I inked it up with some cherry blossom ink, and I'm stamping it on this really pale pink cardstock. You can see I actually have the background stamp laying with it kind of design up on my work surface, and I inked it up, and then I positioned my cardstock onto the stamp rather than taking the stamp to the cardstock. I'm adding this postage piece in the center of my card front using some foam adhesive and pressing that into place. I did trim off the twine just a little bit, and now I'm going to add some faux splatter. I have a white gel pen, and I'm just creating some little dots to make it look like I splattered on some white paint, but this gives my little controlling heart some peace, knowing that I know exactly where every single little splatter is going to go. I just make some of them a little bigger than others. And now I will finish this card off with some iridescent drops. I'm just adding these into the center of the larger floral elements on this floral grouping here. And I added one to that little teeny tag, and that finishes off my card project for today. I absolutely love this color palette that was inspired by the packaging for the stencils, and it was a great jumping off point to kind of get me started, even if I wasn't feeling super creative on this particular day. I hope you enjoyed all of these tips for getting your creative juices flowing, and I hope you enjoyed this look at the brand new Flowers for the Soul product suite available now at Pinkfresh Studio, part of this brand new Joyful Blooms release. You'll want to check it out if you haven't seen it yet. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the YouTube description below, so if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these tips and these tricks. I hope you enjoyed this card project, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of the paper crafting and card making video tutorials. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.